makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
Jordan Peterson appeared on the Joe Rogan show for, I don't know, is it the third, fourth, fifth? I lost track. In fact, the first time I saw Jordan Peterson was on his podcast many years ago. This was at a time when Rogan still occasionally made semi-decent content, and yeah, I think that was the first time that I saw him, and then I later saw that infamous first debate that he had with Sam Harris, which probably the only time that I've enjoyed Sam Harris destroying someone. Um, well, when he used to debate religious nutters, I did enjoy it. After he became a neocon, advocating for nuking the Middle East and torturing people, he sort of fell off my fell from grace in my book. Um, anyway, this was such a so I wanted to make a video on sort of the best bits from that show, and I had already sort of settled in for a comfy 2 hours of doing something else while watching the podcast in the background, and then I realized that it was 4 hours, 4 hours, and I'm sorry, I don't have the self hatred necessary to listen to Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson for 4 hours. So I apologize. I am only going to show the snippets that have been circulating on Twitter. But yeah, I really, really feel for someone who went through the whole thing. Um, so the first issue is why is he wearing what he's wearing? Is he going to like a gala event after the podcast? What is wrong with him? This is just really strange. I honestly think he's losing it a bit. I mean, first you had his he quit the University of Toronto. Rage quit is probably the better word because he wrote this big op-ed that the university was getting too woke, yada yada. He's been having some very erratic Twitter behavior as of late. He blocked me, by the way. I am proud of the fact that he is probably the highest public figure, the best known public figure who has blocked me. This, all the more considering he's such a free speech advocate. But yeah, I still, you know, open a private window and see his Twitter from time to time, and he's just going a bit insane. So I don't think he is right in the head these days. I mean, to be fair, he never was, but I think he's losing it a bit. And I think part of the reason that he's losing it, and this is relevant to this discussion, is uh, I think he's becoming, I mean, I don't think he has become less and less relevant, especially over the past, after his peak popularity was after his first book was published, the 12 Rules for Life. But then his second book didn't really make as much of an impact. I mean, it was in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, books that have come out in the pandemic have kind of fizzled out. I say this as someone who published at the very start of the pandemic, so I have some sympathy for. This is the only bit of sympathy that I will have for Jordan Peterson. Um, Probably a good thing that his book didn't sell too much. But yeah, he's just he's faded. He's no longer um, relevant both from the right but also from the left. And you can tell the relevance of a right-wing figure by how much coverage you see the left do of him. And Jordan Peterson hasn't really gotten that much attention from left-wing pundits and channels. So anyway, the first bit that was probably the most controversial element of this discussion. Again, I haven't seen the whole thing. Maybe more egregious things were said later. But first thing was his views on climate. And I'm not a climate scientist, but I am an economist, and I know a thing or two about statistics, and I know a thing or two about models. And I can tell you that this is a guy who has never, ever, ever done any serious work in statistics for what he's going to say here. So Let's watch.
Hard to sort out. The climate change one is a weird one. So that
Well,
one,
that's because there's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word. And that's what bothers me about the climate change types. It's like, this is something that bothers me about it technically. It's like, well, climate is about everything. So, okay. But you're...
So this is, first of all, this is stupid, because this is like a butterfly theory view of the universe, you know. If a butterfly flutters its wings in Hong Kong, then there's going to be a market crash in Wall Street, okay? Just because this led to this and this and this and that and that. Come on, this is ridiculous. By that logic, everything is about everything. You know, economic models, gotta admit, are not always the most accurate ones. But then you can also argue, well, economics is also about everything. So models are about simplifying reality. That means no model is ever 100% accurate. The whole idea of a model is to give us a relatively good idea of what we think is going to happen, and then use that model as a way to shape climate policy or any other policy. Now, having models, and again, not all models are as good as the other ones. Not all models are 100% accurate. A lot of models depend on assumptions that can be very seriously questioned, and you know, in economics, it's very, very common to have assumptions that lead towards the conclusion that you want to get to. But it's better to have models than to not have models. I mean, this is just not debatable at all. The idea is to have people smart enough to question those models. See, hey, you know, these assumptions might not be as realistic. This could use some tweaking. You know, do your research. Understand what the model says, how it can be improved, what can be taken as pretty, you know, likely to happen, and what can be said was maybe just you know, something has a 50-50 chance of happening. Maybe we won't make policy based on that. You know what I mean? But he's just basically discounting every single model for any, you know, he's basically destroying statistics right here. That's what he's doing. He's basically saying it's a worthless discipline, it's a worthless skill, it's worthless. All models are worthless. That's what he's saying.
Your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a
Warming.
set number of variables.
Yeah.
So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set. Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything?
Well, maybe because it's not just one person doing one single climate model, but dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of climate scientists around the world looking at each other's models, questioning each other's models, and reaching conclusions that sort of settle these debates. That's really what the issue is. Now, like science, these models improve. When there are limitations, these are improved over time. But none of that matters to Jordan Peterson, because apparently if you don't have a model that is 100% accurate, that accounts for 100% of all variables, that has 100% accurate assumptions, it's worthless. All because he wants to make a point that he is essentially a climate denialist. That's what he is. He like all right-wingers, they never are open. That's what really fucking annoys me about right-wingers in the 21st century. They are just so dishonest about the ideas that they're pushing. They never come out openly, you know, whether it's racism, whether it's climate, whatever. They will never be open. He will never say that he is a climate denialist. He will simply make people question as much as possible the science that is behind the climate discourse. And you know, right-wingers are now used to this. They know this is all via dog whistle.
And that's not just a criticism. That's like, if it's about everything, your models aren't right. Because your models do not and cannot model everything.
What do you mean by everything when you say hard to sort out. The climate change one is a weird one. So that
Anyway, that is the first one that just really apparently the whole discussion began on this. But yeah, butterfly theory apparently. I guess if a cow farts somewhere in North Dakota or doesn't fart in North Dakota, then all the climate models are wrong. Because guess what? They didn't have a specific variable of that particular cow farting in North Dakota. Anyway, now why is this appealing to Rogan's audience? Because Rogan's audience loves people like that. It's fundamentally a right-wing audience that most of them aren't open about how right-wing they are. In fact, a small percentage of them might be deluded that they're not right-wingers, but they are. And again, this is everyone he brings to discuss any other issue uses this discourse of plausible deniability that they're not climate denialists, that they're not racist, that they're not anti-vaxxers, but they are. They fundamentally are. And the rhetoric that is used by these people is to make people question the standard assumptions or the facts that they see, and then use also the very real fact that often mainstream media outlets lie about a lot of things, and they're not trustworthy in a lot of things. So if they see that same mainstream media that is not honest about their political opinions and the way that they speak about politics or economics, then they must be wrong about everything. So if they pick up pro-climate discourse, they must be wrong about that because they're wrong about politics. That is how the mentality of these people work. So who does Joe Rogan bring on to discuss climate? Well, I found that one of the few people that he has brought in that has some sort of expertise on climate was Michael Schellenberger. And I saw this clip a while back, and when I saw this again, he discusses climate change alarmism. Why we shouldn't be, that doomsayers about the risks of climate change. And this is the book that he's published, Apocalypse Never: Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All. Again, this is back to like wokeism is worse than the things that woke people are fighting against. Wokeism over racism is worse than racism. So wokeism over climate change is worse than actual climate change. And I found it funny because look at some of the people who gave blurbs for this book. Steven Pinker, another known climate, well, he has a word for it. I forget what it is, because he doesn't want to call himself a climate denialist. He just wants to be a non-alarmist as well. Jonathan Haidt, another well-known figure in the kind of anti-woke circles. So this is a discourse that is appealing to all these people who all are in the same ecosystem of fighting the wokes. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Then they spoke about blackness. And this is by far the most outrageous thing that I've seen any podcast on the level of Joe Rogan's show to say about race. This is utterly ridiculous. So apparently he's been criticized. Oh, so Jordan Peterson has been criticized by Michael Eric Dyson. If you don't know who Michael Eric Dyson is, he's appeared frequently on the Bill Maher show, and generally not agreeing with Bill Maher. And they had a debate a while back over freedom of speech and things like that, in which it was Michael Eric Dyson on one side and someone else who I forget who it was, versus Jordan Peterson and rather regrettably Stephen Fry, also on the Jordan Peterson side. And I thought Michael Eric Dyson did a really good job in that debate, but they seem to have been mortal enemies, or at least in Jordan Peterson's mind, mortal enemies since, and he still has grudges about Dyson after all these years. let's just hear this amazing discussion between two white people about race.
Depending on who you ask, either you're a voice of reason and rationality and personal responsibility, or you're a voice of intolerance and bigotry and anger and hateful
Sexual oppression.
What did Michael
prejudice.
Eric Dyson call you? An angry
and
white man?
Mean, yeah, and a mean, angry white man. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not mean at all.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what's dumb about that statement. It's you're not mean at all. It's
I am white. Actually, that's a lie too. I'm kind of tan, and he was actually not black.
If you're tan,
he was
what
sort
the
of
fuck
brown.
am I?
So, okay, so let's just settle down with this. Apparently, Jordan Peterson is not white because he's slightly tanned. Okay, so I guess if unless you sit next to a screen and your skin color is equal to an R value of 0, a G value of 0, and a B value of 0, is that RGB? Yeah, you're not white. Amazing. And I guess a black person who just isn't, R value of 255, G value of 255, and B value of 255, you're also not black.
Because I'm darker than you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but neither of us are white.
Well, I'm Italian.
And he was
mostly.
brown, not black.
Well, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
What? Oh my, Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. This is insane. This is insane. Remember, this is a society that once thought that if you had 1% of non-white blood in you, you weren't white. Like, that's how bad it was. Okay? And even today, I doubt that in the US you will find someone who is 100% white. I truly doubt it. Like, it must be a very, very small minority. This is crazy. This is crazy. But then, maybe he's calling for the abolition of race as a concept, which would be amazing. But I don't think he's going in that direction.
It's really weird.
The black and white thing is so strange
Yeah,
because
like
the shades are so...
Tan and brown.
There's such a spectrum of shades of people. Unless you're talking to someone who is like one...
Just imagine, this is crazy. Is it that everyone of a single race must have the exact same skin tone? When we say, Scandinavians are tall, well, when I've been to Scandinavia, I'm taller than a lot of Scandinavians. Does that mean that I'm Scandinavian? Or does that mean that the Scandinavians that are shorter than me are Latin American? This is very high IQ stuff here, okay? Very high IQ stuff. I don't expect to get my head around it. There is such a variety of every single physical characteristics that you will find in any demographic group that you just can't make statements about how, blackness has to be after a certain skin tone. There's also a lot of people from non-black demographics who have very dark skin. There's people in South Asia, for example, that have very dark skin, as dark as black people. Of course, you wouldn't call them black because clearly they have other different features. They have facial features that do not resemble the average. And even then, this is like a gross simplification because not all black people all have the same facial features either. Not everyone in Africa looks the same. A West African does not look the same as an East African or an Ethiopian. I'm sorry. This is likewise with white people. Italians don't look the same as Norwegians. And there was a time when they were sort of classified as different, Irish people, who you will struggle to find whiter people on planet Earth than Irish people. And yet, for a time, they were seen as, slightly not white. So, what are they getting at with this discussion? What is a part of me just thinks like they're not even pretending to have an intelligent discussion. They just know that this will piss people off. That's their whole game. This will just piss off the leftists. This will piss off the wokes. So let's just see how we can go on and on about it.
100% African from the darkest place where they're not wearing any clothes all day, and they've developed all that melanin to protect themselves from the sun. You know, even the term black is weird. And when you use it for people that are,
I mean, come on, what part of Africa today do people don't wear clothes? This is racist. Like, this is fucking racist, because come on, go to the poorest country in Africa and you will have civilization. You will have people, you know, dressing with clothes, living in homes. I don't know what this is literally like the mentality of someone going into the Belgian Congo for the first time 100 years ago. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So apparently, according to Joe Rogan, unless you live in Africa, in a place where it is so sunny, and that you don't have enough money to have clothes, and therefore you've been exposed through multiple generations, because I can be exposed to the sun for the next 20 years. I can remain clothesless for 20 years in the sun in the middle of Africa. Trust me, I'm not turning black. So according, this, you would need a couple of generations, many generations. We're in fact talking about possibly millions of years before your body reacts to those conditions by increasing your melanin. This is just such genius level conversation here. Absolutely genius. But apparently, if you're not that guy, you're not really black. But yeah, again, if they were going into a direction of let's just eliminate race because race is a social construct, that's kind of what they're getting at. Of course, they will never say it in those words because that's what every leftist has been saying. Yeah, I would agree. But as it is, this is really fucking racist.
literally my color, it becomes very strange.
Yeah.
You know,
This is true.
it's like,
So you were asking me.
Oh boy. Then here is again this talking point of the left doesn't like comedy, the wokes don't like comedy, is just so old, because since the alt-right sort of became a thing in like 2014-ish onward, we have had 8 years in which right-wingers could prove to us that in fact they are funnier. And in those 8 years, we have had the Babylon Bee. That is the peak level of humor that the right has developed in those 8 years, the Babylon Bee, which is not funny, to be honest. I've seen it occasionally. Occasionally there is something that is like half funny, but for the most part, no. There's, by the way, a really good video by Some More News. I don't know if any of you have seen that channel. It's really funny. The guy's really funny. I really like him. He's one of those left-wing YouTube channels that has sort of flown under the radar, despite the fact that it's pretty massive. But he had a really good video on right-wing comedy, and I really would recommend people watching it. It's quite recent as well, so I'm not going to say anything more, because he really goes and deconstructs the essence of right-wing comedy. But yeah, the fact is, right-wing comedy isn't meant to be funny. But anyway, let's see what they have to say about comedy.
Well, it's also the good comedians are right. They're like musicians. They're right on the border between order and chaos, because the place of maximal funny.
But, oh, by the way, you'll see, and not just on this video, but on the next one that I'm going to show, he always mentions his whole order and chaos thing. It's like his whole worldview is just framed by that concept. Crazy.
Is when you're just about pushing it too far, right? You think, oh, do I have to say this? You know, do I have to say this? Like, yeah, you have to say this. Okay, I'm going to say it. And everyone cracks up, and they crack up, you know, and it blows apart their sterile preconceptions. That's part of cracking up, you know, when you laugh. And it's so cool because it's the antidote to their totalitarianism, comedy. And that's why you can tell anybody who goes after a comedian, it's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. You're the king who can't stand the fool.
So, who is he making a reference to, obviously? Well, probably Dave Chappelle. But again, the art of comedy has always been punch down. Sorry, punch up. Don't punch down, which is what Dave Chappelle did. And I made numerous videos about Dave Chappelle after those incidents. If you look at some of the great, and I would say very politically incorrect comedians like George Carlin, you never got a sense that he was doing that his comedy, his punchlines were ever anything other than like broader social systemic critiques. Same with Bill Hicks, same with, you know, anyone else you want to mention. Now, what he's saying right now, and I also made a video on him, made me think a bit about Anthony Jeselnik. A guy who's very dark humor. You're like, oh no, he's not going there, right? He's not going to make a joke about like killing babies, is he? And then he does make a joke about killing babies, and yet none of what Jeselnik does is sort of offensive to broad groups of people, and he said it himself. Again, I made a video on him. He was interviewed by Larry King, and he said, you know, it is true that the standard of what we consider politically incorrect keeps getting, you know, the bar keeps getting higher. There's more things now that people consider offensive than 20, 40 years ago. But that just means I need to be better as a comedian. And I think he does a really good job at it. So again, Jordan Peterson doesn't really understand comedy.
That's the tyrant. So you reveal yourself, same as people who go after musicians or dancers. Well, it's also the good.
And yeah, so okay, I guess if you don't like jokes that punch down against minorities and other vulnerable people, you are caught in a totalitarian woke mindset. Anyway, finally, I want to leave because on a funny note, because there is no major interview that Jordan Peterson has done recently where he doesn't cry, which is very strange. He must be really in touch, by his own logic, he must be really in touch with his feminine side, the chaos side, because clearly someone who is all in on the order side would be in complete self-control of his emotions all the time. But no, Jordan Peterson cries all the time when he thinks of stuff, especially when he talks about the Bible. He cries all the time. He cried in that interview with Ben Shapiro. Now, again, I have no problem with men crying if you know, on camera, if there's something really emotional that gets to you. I just find it really funny that this is a guy that every single, you know, far right misogynist who genuinely feels that men are superior to women because they are the order and not the chaos, because that is kind of the discourse that Jordan Peterson has always promoted. I find it really strange that he has this habit of crying. So let's just watch him.
Right. And everyone loves, oh man, I went to this bar in Nashville. This band was playing Kelly's Heroes, a great guitarist, the best guitarist I've ever seen.
Not sure why, I just can't imagine Jordan Peterson having fun, but anyway.
And they were playing old country music with a heavy blues rock twist. So they do this great version of Ghost Riders in the Sky. It's 15 minutes long. And this brilliant guitarist just goes way out on a limb. And everybody in the crowd, it was so fun to be there. They're just thrilled to death because they're watching this man doing the same thing that surfers do.
Riffs.
He's like dancing on the edge of chaos and order in this virtual...
Again, dancing on the edge of chaos and... What is this? Oh, God. this guy just, he can't see the world in any other terms than just chaos and order. It's his entire worldview.
Virtuosic manner, and everyone is so taken by that it just lifts them out of the normality of their existence. You know, you see this joy just transfuse them, and that's because they got an intimation of genuine meaning. Right,
Yeah.
right.
That was a very good Vic Berger edit. Yeah, that is Jordan Peterson for you. Again, I would have loved to do a more substantial takedown and debunking of all the shit he said to Joe Rogan, but 4 hours, I'm sorry, I don't get paid for this. I don't get paid for this. But you know how I can get paid for this? If you like, share, and subscribe. So eventually I can monetize this channel. And then, maybe then, will I be able to sit through 4 hours of Jordan Peterson saying bullshit to Joe Rogan. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.